So please, let me welcome to this stage, big round of applause for Brad Berens.
Thank you, Dave. So this is kind of weird for me because ordinarily I don't actually give presentations here, and I don't, if I'm going to give a presentation here, if it's going to be a research presentation with the work that I do with the Center for the Digital Future, not my old academic past. So I'm suffering from a kind of worlds colliding moment right now, but that's okay because in fact this presentation is largely about worlds colliding. And that's one of the things that we'll be talking about. Now, we've been trying to figure out what makes Shakespeare great from the inside of the plays, talking about the content of the plays for about 400 years now, and we still haven't licked it. So I have an idea that we should probably try another approach. Can we pull up the slides, please? So what we have here is this guy. And when we talk about this guy, this is the Shakespeare funerary bust, and it's dead, and it's cold, and it's distant, and it's boring. And most of you, I think, I'm actually hugely grateful to you for showing up after lunch. Dear Lord, it's warm and you have high blood sugar and you probably just want to be curling under your table taking a nap. So thank you for being here. But I want to talk about a different kind of Shakespeare, and I want to talk about this story in a different way. So let's roll. This is a video clip from a movie that's now 20 years old, Star Trek VI. It's about a 30-second clip. Can you roll it, please, Rick?
I offer a toast. The undiscovered country. The future.
The undiscovered country. Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1.
You have not experienced Shakespeare until you have read him in the original Klingon.
Tach, pa, tach, be.
To be or not to be in the original Klingon. And it's a throwaway moment in a relatively forgettable movie. And if that were it, it would still be interesting, but it'd be interesting in the way that screenwriters alluding to the greatest playwright of our language is interesting. But that's where the story gets really weird. Because about 5 years later, the Klingon Language Institute created a full-on translation of Hamlet into Klingon! It's absolutely unfathomable. Why is that? And what I'm arguing today is that says something fundamentally about Shakespeare and about Shakespeare's creation of and contact with and bond with his audience. So it's not just Star Trek. This movie just came out a couple weeks ago. I took my kids to it. It's not bad. But Romeo and Juliet with lawn gnomes? We don't talk about Shakespeare as a business guy. We talk about him as a poet. So most of the time in a business context, when you hear about Shakespeare, it's spelunking in the plays. Someone has a point to make about business leadership and they go into the plays. Oh, neither a borrower nor a lender be. It's really boring. This book, monumentally stupid, and yet the only book written about Shakespeare as a business person. But it's an amazing brand story. This is the only portrait we believe of Shakespeare to be painted in his lifetime. That looks like a guy you might want to hang out with. So what am I talking about? Well, in the last 25 years, there have been 19,000 academic works on Shakespeare, which is orders of magnitude more than the runner-up. And that's just the academic stuff. There are movies, there are TV shows, there are performances, there are popular books. There's this T-shirt. There are knickknacks galore. This T-shirt says, "You disgust me," not disgust as in bluck, but disgust as in so. And of course, we have Shakespeare's Stout, right? What does this say about this brand? What is it about? There's an open quality to what Shakespeare was doing, which is remarkable and largely undiscussed. So what I'm going to discuss in the next few minutes is Shakespeare's relationship to three little ideas: space, time, and identity. So let's talk with space. We'll get to this question of what does this have to do with digital marketing? So space in this case means context. Right? The context of the creation of the plays and the context of the consumption of the plays is the thing that's most important to this conversation. And in this case, a big part of that is geography. First of all, there's a geography of where Shakespeare's globe was. It wasn't in London, it was outside of London, across the Thames. It was in a place called Southwark, or Southwark, and it was not a nice neighborhood. This is the globe, and across the way, there was a bear baiting pit, where bears were tortured to death by dogs. There were brothels and, of course, pubs, because it's England. There's a pub on every corner. And we have contemporary accounts where they talk about two guys are saying, well, what should we do today, Bob? Well, we could get a couple of horse, or we could go see Hamlet. And the really weird thing is that from time to time, they actually went to see Hamlet. So this was not a good neighborhood. And it was not a good neighborhood. It was across the river. Why? Because the town fathers in London didn't want all that traffic. They didn't want those horrible theater people. It was kind of like a really low-rent, cheesy version of Las Vegas. Now, this, however, is how we think about watching things today, right? Right now, right, you are all in the dark. I'm up here. There's a separation between us. Only a couple of hardy souls are actually sitting at the front tables. Right? Claudia was saying this morning, it's like, don't look into the light, don't look into the light. Right? The environment is controlled. Everyone shares the same focus. We believe that these things should be immersive. There was a different kind of immersion 400 years ago. It's open air. There's no controlled lighting. It's theater in the round. Right? You're not only looking at the show, you're looking at the other people watching the show. If you look up at top, it's a little hard to see, but there are people in the gallery. It would be like if there were audience members sitting up there. Right? This was a very robust and complicated viewing experience. This was real time in the real sense, not in the sense we usually mean, which is recent, but real time is in, you had no idea what was going on there. You could be sitting in the theater and a prostitute could be soliciting business from the guy right next to you, or possibly performing the business behind the curtain. There was a lot going on. This is another contemporary print, and if you look here, you see that the people were actually standing right here. Right? It was very in your face. You didn't know where to focus. There wasn't one focus. And that was a strength. So let's talk about time. Again, this is life without a pause button. Right? There is no ability to control the flow of information when you're in real-time experience. Simultaneous experience is the thing that is most constitutive of human happiness. It's the thing that digital media is the most averse to because we live in an on-demand world. And it's the thing that made Shakespeare's experience in the original context most interesting. If you have to compare seeing a show at the Globe 400 years ago, you're much better suited to compare it to seeing a football game today than to seeing a play on Broadway. I saw the Jude Law Hamlet last year on Broadway. It was fantastic. It's nothing like what the original was, though it was very good. When you're watching a football game, any football, raise your hand if you're a big football fan. Okay. So you all know, or if you're sadly married to one, so if you're watching a football game, you're not only watching the game, you're also watching all the other games that might have happened alongside it. So the people who are real fans of a team, they come and they say, well, if that guy, that would have been good, but if the quarterback hadn't pulled his hamstring 3 months ago, this would be an entirely different game. Right? Again and again, they're layering on past experience, current experience, what are called side shadows, alternates to the experience. And they're able to do that because it's the same team in the same stadium. Right? And it's a way of exercising expertise. And it's particularly powered by the presence of other people. So Dan Goleman, in his brilliant book, Social Intelligence, talks about how there are contagious emotions. When you're in the presence of other people, they can catch your emotions and you can catch theirs. So let's get back to why Shakespeare? There were a lot of playwrights at this time. Why are there no Klingon Dr. Faustuses? And forget about the Renaissance. Why is there not a Klingon version of The Odd Couple? Well, Shakespeare had a unique socioeconomic relationship with the rest with his workplace. So he was an actor, famous for playing the ghost in Hamlet. He was a sharer. He was part owner of the company. He was a householder. He was part owner of the buildings in which they played. And of course, famously, he was a dramatist. He had a longitudinal, cumulative, building relationship with the context of his work, with the building, with the players, with the audience, that was unlike anything before or since. So let's talk about what this means in action. We'll talk about one moment in Hamlet. It's a famous moment, and we know that it's a famous moment because it even survives in the famous bad quarto, a pirated edition. One of the bit players got fired, remembered much of the play, like 3/4 of it. These guys had incredible memories and wrote it all down. He missed a lot of bits. To be or not to be in that version is to be or not to be. There's the point. right? Not quite the same as to be or not to be, that's the question. It's famously corrupt, and yet he gets this moment, which I'll read to you in modern English, perfectly. Hamlet, my lord, you played, he says this to Polonius, the king's counselor. My lord, you played once in the university, you say? And Polonius says, that did I, my lord, and was accounted a good actor. What did you enact? I did enact Julius Caesar. I was killed in the Capitol. Brutus killed me. It was a brute part of him to kill, so capital a calf there. That's a pretty bad joke. It's along the lines of a Charlie Sheen reference today. So why is this so famous? Well, you have to look at the original context. Because in 1599, the Globe Theatre opened to great acclaim. The first play that they actually performed was Julius Caesar. Richard Burbage played Brutus. John Hemmings played Caesar. Skip ahead one season to 1600. The Globe's a big success. More and more theaters are moving across the water to Southwark. Hamlet premieres. This time, Richard Burbage plays Hamlet, and John Hemmings plays Polonius. So Burbage, who played Brutus, is now playing Hamlet, talking on stage in that scene, those lines I just read, to Hemmings, who had played Caesar, who Brutus killed, and now he's playing Polonius. So Hamlet and Polonius are talking about Brutus and Caesar, and they're the guys who played Brutus and Caesar. And my head hurts now. And the thing that's interesting about it, oh, by the way, a little spoiler alert, if you haven't read the play. Shame on you if you haven't read the play. Couple scenes later, Hamlet kills Polonius. Right? So this illusion, the reference from the bodies of the actors to the last performance evoke a different kind of experience and meaning with the performance that we're actually watching. What's going on? Right? What is this, and what does it mean? What it means is that for the people in the audience who'd seen the earlier performance and who are now seeing the later performance, fireworks are going on. A huge amount of references back and forth. And in fact, Julius Caesar is elaborately referred to in the first, 10 minutes of the play. So it was activated repeatedly. So both in that scene, those lines that I read to you, and later, when Hamlet kills Polonius, there are all of these references back and forth, and all of this satisfaction. So what does this mean, right? What's the takeaway here in terms of what it means from the play? And what I'm going to argue is that it doesn't mean anything. It aggressively means nothing. That if you pursue this, it quickly falls apart. Sure, Brutus is indecisive, Hamlet is indecisive, but Brutus kills Caesar deliberately in public with a lot of other guys, et tu, Brute. Hamlet kills Polonius in private by accident, right? You grab onto these threads and try to have them mean something, and they just unravel entirely. But the experience of that huge connectivity, that moment where you're referring to your previous experience while you're having your current experience, is deeply pleasurable, in the same way that the football game is pleasurable. It's pleasurable because we all like to feel like experts. So the combination of context plus time leads to expertise. The exercise of expertise, particularly when it's creative, leads to pleasure. Shakespeare created an acutely pleasing environment for his regular customers. So a Soviet theorist named Mikhail Bakhtin has influenced my thinking on this a lot. And he had three key concepts and that really illuminate this. The first is eventness. Now, eventness is when something can go horribly wrong. Right? I could fall off this stage right now. That doesn't happen in the movies unless it's deliberate, right? Unless a character on stage in a movie is falling off the stage. So eventness is that possibility of disaster. That's why we go to live concerts. That's why we go to live theater and to sporting events, because we don't know what could happen, but somebody could get killed, right? And just by virtue of making it through a production in live theater or a live concert without some massive, fuck-up happening, well, golly, right? That's a triumph by itself because the potential is there for it to be terrible. Unrepeatability is the same thing. You can have the same two teams playing football 3 times in 3 days, and the result and the process of getting there is going to be the same. And unfinalizability